Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Read I.O. So we're in Route E, and we just got the story of how Babylon was created. And let's see. No light, nor sound, nor gravity reaches here. In this space of nothingness, I have a dream. I am dreaming while being awake. Almost like living while dead.
私の体はすでに死んでいる。だから死ぬことができない。死んでいるがゆえに永遠に生きなければならないのだ。
You are there. The legendary Gilgamesh who continuously sought eternal life. Before long, I too shall go to where you are. Babylon's Marduk. Their entry 3 years ago forced me to resign from Anunnaki. Since then, I've come to the point where I feel like the mythical Tiamat who was defeated by Marduk. If that's the case, then he might be comparable to Apsu, another primordial god like Tiamat who was slain before her. Tiamat and Apsu had a son named Kingu. In that case, do we have a Kingu among us? All the bitterness that Yayoi sensei's felt up until now appears on her face. Because for her, telling this story must be like gouging out an old scar that still hasn't healed. And this is only the beginning of Sensei's deepening suffering. It's a long, painful, and unpleasant story. 2030. It came completely out of the blue. Babylon lost its guardian deity, its backers. Suddenly, Exarch abandoned its support of Babylon, shifting to other businesses. The reasons they gave for doing so are as follows. Number 1, they could no longer live up to the demands of its endlessly growing user base. Number 2, the cost was also endlessly growing. Number 3, the advertising revenue could not meet expectations. Number 4, it wasn't improving their corporate image. They also gave 10 official apparent reasons like this to the public for giving up on it. And so the spider's thread pulling up Babylon was severed without another word. They were extremely cunning. It was as if they'd planned everything from the start. Nabu would always say the following as if he had foreseen it.
こんな高価なおもちゃを連中が何の魂胆もなく貸してくれるはずがないさ。
The main server, quantum computer Marduk, shut down. System-destroying viruses completely broke Marduk. Babylon began to collapse. The scale of the territories that had been expanded by Exarch began to shrink. That process was conducted by a program that Enlil constructed herself, represented as storms and floods. It submerged the districts on the net one after another. Enlil, feeling she was able to right her wrongs, joyfully did this in order to purge all traces of Exarch, which she hated so much. And thus the city on the net was crammed into one area. Ea tried appealing to the users, particularly ICs, to stay in Babylon, but many of the people who had lost sight of Babylon's possibilities and future prospects left in the blink of an eye.
そんな様子に、ベグ自身もまたユーザーに絶望して姿を消したの。
That was the trigger. The members of Anunnaki, who could no longer share the same dreams, left Babylon one by one, never to log in again. Nabu took his skills and became an exclusive staff member of Exarch. Nergal also gave up, but started his own independent business. That business is known as Death's Crossroads. Ishtar, realizing anew that Ereshkigal's attitude had been justified, left the team that the woman she called her sister had been a part of. And then, after seeing all this,
最後に、創始者である私自身もコミュニティを去った。
in reality, that was the complete collapse of Anunnaki. And thus the only members of Anunnaki that stayed with Babylon were Enlil and Sin. Enlil, who'd worked hard in conveying and preserving Babylon's identity, probably fell into deep despair in that situation. She felt as if the world itself had betrayed her, rejected her, and completely denied herself. However, Sensei learned this later, that no matter how deep the despair she was in, Enlil would try to protect Babylon to the bitter end. Babylon wasn't completely ruined. Almost all the passionate users that remained were ICs. What's more, they were all very well trained, thanks to Ishtar. They named themselves Edok and volunteered to manage and maintain Babylon by themselves. And so, Babylon unexpectedly became a spontaneously generated IC society. Enlil deeply loved Edok, who had braved the very same floods she had caused and had survived. In turn, they believed that they were a new generation of humanity that had been saved via an ark. And so she tried to guide them with the right ideology. In her speech following the acts of terrorism committed in Exarch's Japanese branch office building, Enlil said this in the following manner.
かの闇よりも深き漆黒の淵で、私は決意した。自分の意に沿わない世界ならば、自らの手で、新しい現実を作り直そう、とな。この手で現実をプログラムし直すのだ。例えば、バビロンの中には圧倒的なリアルがある。生と死の狭間のギリギリ感。バビロンから現実へと持ち込もうではないか。そのためには、この国を、世界全土を、徹底的に混乱させ、秩序を破壊する必要がある。私の言葉を理解する、我らが愛しき同胞らよ。これは IC の理想世界を作るための聖戦なのだ。
The many members of Edok accepted the ideals of Enlil, and the only one of the Great Triad who remained in Babylon, and deified her as His Excellency. Later, she became a charismatic leader who was even called the Once and Future King. Before long, after the original users ended the destruction and learned about properly managing Babylon, things slowly began to go back to the way they were. Enlil carefully picked out the steadfast members from within Edok. Her imaginary vision, which could read all but visible light, proved to be handy there. And then she picked out members who were completely synchronized with her own ideology to be agents of her internal organization, Code. Edok, their public face, acted as a cover for Code. What's more, as Babylon was the very definition of a corrupt world, it became a superb camouflage for their actual criminal activities. Slowly, the boundary line between the net and reality became vague for the members. And so, Code's preparations to commit cyber-terrorism against Exarch/the government/the world progressed steadily. And Sin, Aoi Mutsuki, also got caught up in this commotion. First, Mutsuki was successful in forcing Marduk to reboot together with Enlil. That act was practically a miracle that could only be brought about by their brilliance, for as far as Anu knew, Marduk was dead at that time. Furthermore, Mutsuki answered Enlil's request and created Io, an AI system that molded the shadows, the user's other selves on the net. Wait. Molded? Okay. At first, they received flames from many users saying that Io was a useless addition. But because those were just users who were not satisfied with the currently existing game, the general user base gradually began to accept Io. Interacting with shadows brought about narcotic-like effects on many users. The reason for this is that the system of linking to one's shadow or to Babylon via Io is such a magnificent experience that the body begins to release intercerebral pleasure substances. Refers to dopamine, endorphins, hormones, or neurotransmitters that are secreted at times when humans are naturally experiencing pleasant feelings. Two examples would be the refreshing feeling of having played strenuous sports, or the emotions experienced when viewing a moving piece of art. These substances have pain-killing and tranquilizing effects, which is what produces the feeling of assurance. The amount of secretion is maxed out when the person is engrossed in some activity. As a result, humans are motivated to immerse themselves in that same activity to re-experience that same sense of relief. Also known as intracerebral narcotic substances. Despite the inclusion of the word narcotics in their name, these natural substances dissolve faster than what we think of as narcotics, which is to say, synthesized narcotics. In other words, Io had the aspects of a computer drug. In order to prevent the players from leaving, Enlil ended up imitating Exarch. She also had another separate expectation. Io was a program used to accumulate the player's information, experiences, and memories to personalize shadows. The information accumulated via the shadows would gather in Marduk. Infinite experiences, various behavioral patterns, thought patterns, memories. The more they assembled, the further they made every shadow and Marduk itself evolve. All in order to return Marduk to its former glory and for it to excel once again. Before long, Marduk would probably rush out of Babylon, break through all kinds of securities like they were tissue paper, and function as the strongest cyber weapon. It would swallow up the world like in the Flood myth, completely destroy it, and then create a new world then and there. That was Enlil's plan. It was at that time that Ea returned once again in order to observe Babylon's situation. When she sensitively picked up on Babylon's decay, she went to admonish Enlil. Enlil awaited Ea in a place in reality that was devoid of people, taking her subordinates from code with her. Then she talked about her ideals with Ea and offered her a proposal. Why don't we change the world together? But because Ea treated reality and the net equally, she refused Enlil. Enlil, already overcome with megalomania, considered her refusal a huge blow to her pride, and so she executed Ea on the spot. Wait, but why did Ea behave like one of Enlil's subordinates, or collaborators, after Enlil killed her? When she lost her shell known as her body and became a standalone null, a ghost, did she also lose her memories? No, that's not a satisfactory explanation at all. Something's fishy. That theory is twisted somewhere. It doesn't feel persuasive at all.
メグがなぜ司と手を組んでいたのか、それについては今の時点でははっきりとしたことは言えない。まだ情報が足りないの。ただ、油断しない方がいいわね。
When she finishes saying that, Sensei sighs heavily.
お疲れ様。長かったけど、これで私の昔話はおしまい。ちゃんと理解していただけたかしら？
When I come to my senses, I realize that I've drunk all the coffee I prepared, including the stuff in the pod. I firmly stare into the empty cup in my left hand. There's no problems. I've successfully and accurately input all the information into my head. If I need to reaffirm anything, I can always rewind it to check. But to think that Mutsuki was involved in such a gigantic, monstrous maelstrom of strife, and that she was deceived, used, toyed with, and finally possibly driven to death as a pawn in the ambitions of that damned Enlil, Izumo Tsukasa. My hatred and revulsion towards Izumo gush out along with my unfathomable despair and regret towards the past and future. Does that mean that Mutsuki is writhing in agony in the very lowest pits of hell, fated to suffer endless torture? She sought my help, didn't she? And yet
Mutsuki.
I instinctively say that word. My body loses strength, and I lean on the sofa as I hang my head down.
少年。
Sensei is still calling out to me. She has more to say?
なぜ私はこんな長い昔話なんてしたと思う？
Hell if I know. I listened carefully to her story and tried to understand as best I could in order to reaffirm what I should be doing. But that's lost meaning too. What I've learned is that it's all too late, and that I was guilty of not understanding her. There's no possibility that Mutsuki's still alive. My wishes are dead. At the very least, I want to take her with these hands, even if it's just her corpse. Oh, I see. So that's what that vision meant? When I lost Mutsuki, I lost the meaning of my existence. And the world I was in at that time it was lost in that very instant. What lies ahead is despair. An eternal, inescapable prison. From this point onward, I will continue to kill, damage, and destroy Mutsuki and the world over and over again, for eternity.
私はね、少年。私のすべてを知ってもらった上で、君に決断してもらいたかったの。私の中の光も闇もすべて理解してもらった上で、私の覚悟を君に伝えたかったの。君にすべてを託したかったの。それができるのは君しかいない。
I weakly lift my head. Sensei's hologram is staring at my eyes.
私はメグと協議し、今後バビロンの運営を再び私を中心とする神聖アヌンナキが行い、司の率いるコードとは決別する。
What? Didn't she just tell me earlier to not let my guard down around Aya?
メグのことは確かに懸念すべき要素が多いけれど、でも、司と互角に渡り合うためには、彼女の力が絶対に必要なの。彼女なら、まだ説得できる余地があると思う。それにね。
But in the first place, there's no way Enlil should be forgiven. What is she thinking? Just then, Sensei says what I can only describe as a shocking fact.
ムツキはまだ生きてる。
What was that? My eyes widen as I directly stare into Yayoi Sensei's eyes. Within those eyes is a powerful, almost divine light. She's definitely not lying. Blood and polyheme run through my body. My heart pounds furiously. I notice my heartbeat accelerating. I can't move. I can't even think about the simplest of things. The current me is doing everything he can just to accept that fact. My mind goes blank. My vision goes dim. Everything in front of me begins to blur. Before long, on the other side of that veil, I see it.
着いたわ。ここよ。
これがエニグマだ。バビロンとマルドゥークのために、神と共に私が作った。
ムツキ、本当に無事だったんだね。
ずっとここで待ってたんだよ。絶対に救い出しに来てくれるって信じてた。
Mutsuki. When I come to my senses, I'm still in the hotel room, facing Yayoi Sensei's hologram. Was that an illusion? No. There's no way in hell that was an illusion. That was definitely a reality that I myself experienced. Something that actually happened. As if to support that, Sensei continues.
バビロンの中枢、そのすべてを管理するメインコンピューター、マルドゥークには特殊なインターフェース、エニグマが接続されているわ。エニグマは人間の脳が紡ぎ出す夢をエミュレートして、膨大なデータを圧縮、管理するための装置で、操作するには、オペレーターは専用のポッドの中に入り、実際に夢を見る必要があるの。レム睡眠ってやつね。ムツキは、ずっとそこで目覚めることのない夢を見ているのよ。
A second later, I should say here, grasp the mug in my left hand so strongly that it breaks into pieces.
司、エンリルは、ムツキを誰にも渡さないために、
エニグマのポットの中に封じ込めておいたのよ。だから、ムツキが生きてるのなら、やりようがあるわ。司を止めることができるのは、ムツキだけだから。いい。メグたちの力を借りれば、すべてを解決する手段があるの。たとえ、その結果として、かつての仲間を切ることになっても、自分が生み出した世界に本当の終止符を打つことになるとしても、私は、とうに覚悟はできてるわ。
The heft of the moon's age noticeably weighs down this right arm.
いいだろ
I understand what my role is. I'll lend her a hand, and then I'll save my irreplaceable sister. The essential element in this mission is trust. Trust in myself, in my sister, and in him. I will make our goal a reality, for me and for everybody else.